It's an organization that's kind of, I don't think, I've only worked in this organization, so I really don't have a real solid perspective on it. But it's one of those great places where when you say, "Oh, I work at National Geographic," everyone goes, "Really? How is it to work there?" And it is. It's kind of it's a neat place. You are never bored. You're learning something every day. A little silly attribute I always kind of connect with National Geographic is if you ever do you ever watch the show Jeopardy?
Yep.
If you ever watch it and you are a regular here at the National Geographic, people go, "How did you know that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's because I work." It's stuff that you just learn, by osmosis in the halls and in wall walks, and presentations, and then in the auditorium. There's always stuff going on. So it's just a great place to learn, and I've thoroughly enjoyed my 40 years here. Let's just put it that way. So it's a weird career path I've had because I've had a lot of kind of firsts in the organization, and I feel good about the fact that I've had kind of a lasting impression just through I was in on the ground floor of a lot of initiatives that are still to this day doing extremely well. Our CEO was 85. It was the old. We were old. It was the National Geographic family, and when I walked in here, our CEO was 92. So it was the good old boys world that I lived in. We literally were in coat and tie and suits every day. We had a dress code. There was you either had to wear either a blue or a white shirt and a tie, no stripes. It was literally, that was how old guard it was. As I think I mentioned to you, well, maybe I didn't mention it to you, when I first graduated college, in that my senior year in college, I had every expectation, being a Navy brat, following my father's footsteps. So I ended up going down to Pensacola, got accepted into the program. I was going to be an aviator flying out of jets off of aircraft carriers. And in my senior year, second semester, I grew a quarter inch, and that bumped me out of the program because I was literally got too tall to be actually be in the flight chair. And you need it's like 2.5 inches over your head, because if you don't have that 2.5 inches, when that hatch pops, if you have to eject, if you don't have that 2.5 inches, you're going to get decapitated. So anyway, I get off track. But anyway, so I ended up having to rethink my entire career because I grew too tall. So it was a function of who do you know, and kind of as far as I'm concerned, I think networking has been kind of one of my strongest attributes it's set me well for 40 years at National Geographic. Because literally, the first thing I had to do was, who do I know? My little brother's godfather was one of the society's founding fathers. So if you go down in the lobby there, and where on the wall they have all the names of the founding fathers, one of those gentlemen was my little brother's, and he was like he came to Christmas every year from when I was a little lad until he died, and whatever I want to say, it was like I was 24 when he died, I think. And I walked in this place when I was 21. So anyway, so I ended up graduating college and made the old phone call to Dr. McNew, and he said, not a problem. He made a phone call, called what is now Human Resources, and said, give this kid a break. Straight out of college, doesn't know anything, but he maybe has a future here. So regretfully, he did not tell Human Resources to give me a good job. So I ended up going in for the de facto interview, and they told me to show up on Monday, and I showed up on Monday. They sent me to the warehouse. So 40 years later, I started my career, basically driving forklifts and out in Gaithersburg, which was kind of from you got to start somewhere. So I spent the first couple of years out in the warehouse in what was really a annex of all the images of the National Geographic. It's a warehouse of imagery. Where it was old black and white prints, black and white negatives, the original color daguerreotypes and Finlay glass plates for the first color images in the world. That was one of my first neat projects, was to go through, I don't know, had to be 75 to 80 wooden crates full of these glass plates. And I had to go through one by one and identify which ones were still salvageable. They'd been, they'd been in wooden crates for decades, but they had not been atmospherically controlled. So, and it's like onion skin between the plates. It's really how a Finlay is created. So they literally, I had to go through and put them on a light table and see if there was any image left. And there was some very, very cool stuff. Because you're talking about imagery from like 1920 through to around 1950. So 30 years of history of National Geographic, explorers and photographers going all over the world. Very, very wild stuff. And as I say, we were able to capture, I'd say around 15 to 20% of Save It. And then we'd end up moving it over to safety-based film. So that was my first job, which was kind of cool right out of the bat. And then continued to work in the what was called the Illustrations Library for a couple more years, until an opportunity presented itself downtown. I had clearly presented well over the phone with my comrades in the Illustrations Library down here, and they thought that I could potentially fit this bill of being the face of the Illustrations Library in the 17th Street building. So I literally was the front desk guy. If anyone ever came to get imagery for whether it was the magazines or books or marketing promotion pieces, I was the guy they would come to, and then we'd kind of confer and try to figure out the best approach to getting them the images they need. So 3 years later, I had another opportunity, and so basically you'll see a pattern here. Because literally, I would spend around 2 to 3 years in every job. I've had 11 careers, completely different careers in 40 years here. Each one was a function of I would present well enough, impress the people I was working with, that they would come to me and ask me to join their team. I never applied for any job in this organization other than day one. So, which is kind of, it's a different approach. But one thing I tell all the youngsters around here is, you cannot kind of rest on your laurels and stay with a job, the same job forever and a day, because you're literally going to be looking at a 3 to 4% raise every year, and that's barely going to keep up with the cost of living. So you do have to kind of grow within the organization you're working with, and that's essentially the approach I took. So I literally ended up, I did my 3-year stint in the Illustrations Library. I then moved on to what was the original book service division, and spent around 3-4 years there, where I started as a picture researcher. I then became a picture editor, and then was stolen by the boss in the book division to basically manage that division, be kind of a business administrator. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I ended up kind of starting on the finance side of the business, which I didn't know anything about. As I say, I'm just a quick learner, and that's another thing to just with the new recruits. I'm always say, just be a big sponge, ask a lot of questions, and pick it up quick. If you do that, it will it'll stead you well. It did that for me. So I ended up starting to run all the financials for the book division. Also, as a result of looking at the financials, as far as the editorial development of a book, you also have to look at the cost of manufacturing, because that plays significantly into your overall financials. So I had to learn that side of the business. Well, guess what? Around 3 to 4 years into that business, they closed that division, and as being the right-hand man of the head of the department who was let go, 99% of the time, historically, the right-hand man goes with that guy. Happily, I had again impressed enough people in other divisions, specifically the manufacturing group, the manufacturing and quality management group here at the National Geographic, that they wanted me to come over to them before I was let go. So I skirted a quick departure and moved over to manufacturing and ran all of their business operations and financials for another 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
So we might want to expand National Geographic magazine beyond just being the English language business into something where local language publications around the world could take our content, localize it, and publish it, and distribute it in their territory. So we started. He came to me because of my manufacturing background, and again he'd had some exposure to me through the old illustrations library. So we were somewhat buddies. So he came to me and said, "Hey, Gary, there's a new business that we're just trying to launch, and I'd love you to be on my team." So it was Rob and I who started what is now the ILA, the International Licensing and Alliances Group, which again started as it actually started as a Japanese edition in that first year, a Spanish edition in the third year, and whatever, 25 years later, we're at over 40 languages. Hey, we've kind of redefined what our book product is. We used to do nothing but these large format, 4-color, photographic books that started at $40 and went up to $200. That market is getting smaller and smaller every year. And so what we're doing is, because B&N's also shrinking, you don't see the B&N's and the Borders is gone. So what we're doing is we're expanding to the Walmarts, the Costco's, the mass market merchandisers, and creating products specifically for them. So we'll take a book that we might have had for $40 and we can either make it a soft cover on small, cheaper paper, bring down the trim size of it so that it's now $18.95. And in the Walmart and Costco markets, $18.95 for a 400-page book that's a perceived high value, especially when it has a National Geographic brand on it. So we have been able to explode our business opportunities by kind of redefining the variety of product we have, and you're exposing a huge volume of North America to National Geographic. They didn't have that opportunity before. So hopefully it'll stead us well as we move forward, because we're trying to get a younger member interested in being a part of the National Geographic experience. In 1979, 1980, we wanted to approach the Chinese government about doing a book on China. And at that point, basically, our relationship with China was nebulous at best. So National Geographic basically broke ranks. We talked to the federal, the government, White House actually, to get an approval to even go down this road. So we got the green light, because we're really a non-political entity, so we weren't going to ruffle any political feathers by approaching the Chinese about doing the book. They were like, "Hey, have at it, good luck." Because we don't expect you to have any luck getting through to them and getting them to allow journalistic entry into the country to document how life is over there. So we said, well, okay, fine. So we were in touch with the Chinese embassy, and ultimately this seal is what the Chinese and National Geographic used to seal the deal for doing a book, which was called The Journey into China. And that was it's almost 2.5 years in development. But so I've been kind of the lead guy who would build all the atlases for the organization. And I've kind of seen the evolution, and it's been an extremely successful program. The 9th edition ended up, I'm going to say it was $1.5 million, in contribution to the organization. So that's a nice backbone to our business. But guess what? You and your age group are not going to want to have an 18-pound atlas that's so cumbersome. If you want to find out where Zambia is, you're literally going to go on your phone and find it pretty damn immediately. So good news is that even though the hardcover printed atlas, I think the 10th edition will be the last one we're ever going to do. We're adapting all that content into digital, so you can pull it up on your app, or you can do any number of Google searches or whatever. So we'll be able to continue to generate mapping that'll be used around the world. It just won't be in a large format atlas anymore, which is kind of sad. But anyway, it's just the nature of the evolution of publishing. So,
what are the questions that they ask you in the GW program?
pardon?
What are the questions that they ask you in the GW program?
Oh, just basically what it takes to be a production manager, and I literally would kind of walk them through everything from how a book is acquired, what's involved with picking our subjects.
Can you tell me all that?
Oh God, I could go on because that interview is almost an hour long. So anyway, but in real brief, we end up having what on the adult side around 6 editors, project editors. Kids has around another 7 or 8. And they are the ones who are charged with going out into the marketplace and doing their research, whether it's online or going to the bookstores, being in touch with their stables of authors to try to figure out what the next, when we ideally want to be doing, identifying our books around 18 to 24 months out, what we want to be building. So they do the research, they come to management. In some cases, we're going, it's may work, it may not. We actually have online testing abilities, so we've got a pool of around 5,000 people that we're just going to do a blast every week of, hey, would you be interested in this book, that book? And they kind of come back and give us the feedback we need to know which ones we want to move forward with. So once we kind of narrow that field of subjects down, then we end up working on a financial model to try to figure out whether we can justify it.